Hello, this is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this podcast series is called Aging Like a Guru. Today's podcast is talking about the fact that sometimes we need a nap. Sometimes we just want a nap. There are days that I wake up and I've had a rough night, maybe not slept so well as I'd like to, and I wake up and I go, I just can't wait to take a nap. And that's kind of the trajectory of my morning is to get things done, work with my clients, take care of business, walk Gracie, have lunch, and then it's time for a nap. And giving myself that hour of rest is a really good thing because I think for me, and I think this is true for a lot of people, is sometimes our brains are so busy, we're so used to it being busy that we don't know that we're getting exhausted, and we're exhausting ourselves maybe when we just can slow down a little bit and take time to rest. Now, if you're listening to this and you're working and you have a job and you go, I can't take a nap, it's like, yeah, well, that's true, perhaps, and perhaps you can just step outside from your work or go someplace where you can just take a moment to rest your head. But a lot of times, as we are aging and our bodies are needing to rest, we can get exhausted. And it's not unusual for people to say, "Hey, I'm exhausted," and I think it's because I'm getting old. And that might be true, and a lot of people slow down. But for a lot of people, they don't slow down. Their capacities physically and emotionally and spiritually and mentally are such that they have the resilience and the strength, and they have the energy. And like I spoke to in the previous podcast about doing what's yours to do, that energizes you, and that keeps it from being necessary in a sense that we get exhausted. But sometimes we get exhausted. A lot of times, and I also mentioned in the previous podcast how I had worked on a painting all weekend, and then Sunday night I didn't feel like I had a weekend off. I felt like I'd worked all weekend, and so I was tired on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and I finally kind of was back to my normal self on Thursday. But sometimes we just get exhausted. Sometimes our bodies or our minds just need a break. And how willing are you, how willing am I to listen to our bodies, listen to our minds to say, I just need to put some space in there. And I talked about this a couple, I think it was 150, the podcast a couple of times ago, of sometimes we need the space. We have space and to make space really allows our brain to rest. And that's kind of an unusual concept, especially in the United States, where we're just so pushed to think and produce and be productive like 98% of the time. And when we find ourselves being less than productive, we think there's something wrong, as opposed to maybe we're just oriented, maybe our consensus view of reality of how it should be shouldn't be that. If we look at other countries, and especially in Europe, they make time for relaxing, for resting, for recreating, for recreation. And it's not just a weekend thing, it's during the day. In a lot of the Latin countries, they have siestas, that time where it's like 2 hours of rest time where you take a break. And it just it's just part of their normal routine and normal orientation in life. And we just don't think about that here in the United States. It's not part of our paradigm. However, we have a lot more stress-related illnesses in the United States than any place else in the world. Isn't that something? We have more disease. We have one of the highest rates of cancer in the world, and again, stress-related illnesses. And it's because we really don't take care of ourselves. We don't take care of our bodies. We don't use our intelligence to slow down when we're tired. We don't use our intelligence to eat foods that actually nourish us. We eat comfort food, which can be nourishing on a level, but it doesn't. It adds to the stress of our bodies, and our adrenals and our hormones and our glands and our everything can get tired of that, and it needs rest. A client of mine, Marcia, is going through a challenging time, but it doesn't make sense to her that she's going through a challenging time. And she's in her 40s, and of course it doesn't make sense that she's exhausted and emotionally exhausted in all ways. And she's like, I don't want to do anything. And it's like, it makes sense. It makes sense because I'm holding the space for all of her, not just everybody else is doing this, and so I'm doing this too. She's got kids and a husband and a dog and a job and all of the things that sound normal. But because of the paradigm, because of our context in the United States of pushing, being productive all the time, she doesn't create any time to rest. And so when she thinks about, hey, maybe I'll go away for a weekend, and that feels exhausting as staying home, we know this woman is really, really tired, but she can't accept it. So a lot of our orientation is she can't accept it because it doesn't appear to be normal. But if she doesn't accept it, she'll probably get sicker in ways. And I say that she's not sick, but she is not taking care of herself, and she is stressed and emotionally in dis-ease in her life. And she's having a hard time figuring out how to create ease and how to create a sense of who am I in this calamity of reality. And as we get older, we're constantly asking ourselves that question, aren't we? We're saying, who am I today? Who am I now? A fellow that was part of my aging group, he passed away of cancer a couple of years ago. And he would come to our aging group and he'd say, well, today is a new normal for me. I don't know what that is. I'm not who I used to be. So as we age, as we move in through this process of being us in this lifespan, we're confronted with life, and sometimes we get tired, and it's really okay to take a nap. My mom was a great role model. She had 9 kids. And when she had a chance, she would put her feet up and she would take a nap. And I love that about her, that she would, there's all this stuff going on and she's just laid down just to get her feet up and maybe fall asleep for a few minutes just to rest and or create that space where she's out of the insanity of reality. And I've used that statement, the insanity of the reality, because if we look at the elements, and I was thinking, I was talking about Marcia. Marcia's children are pre-adolescent and moving into adolescence, and so they're beginning to push for power. They're beginning to acknowledge who they are as individuals, and they want to do things the way they want to do them. And Marcia and her husband, they aren't ready for this. They're not prepared for what's happening in their families because they liked it. They were, able to handle when life was slower with little kids or slower in a different way. And now their children are older and they're beginning to make declarations and demands for themselves, and it's challenging. Plus having a job, plus being married, plus having a house and a dog and family and desires and creativity, all of that all together feels sometimes insane. And we don't own that very well. We don't want to. It's like, it feels insane. And it does, because it is. All of the pressures that we put on ourselves, all of the things that we think we have to do, all the obligations. I'm obligated to show up for this or for that when you're not. But that's the way that our orientation, because of our world or our family cultures, say this is what we have to do. But if it's making us sick and exhausted, maybe it's not such a good idea. I don't know. I do know, but what you're going to do, what you're going to do. But the intention of these podcasts is to say, how are you choosing to take care of yourself? How are you choosing to give yourself a break? How are you choosing to make space for resting and for relaxation? Sometimes sleep time is not the time. I find that I'm awake a good hour to 2 hours a night, just processing life. And so that's just what happens. And so sometimes having a rest during the day, going for a walk in the woods or whatever is required so that my well-being is more stable. And sometimes we're just exhausted because of the pressures of the politics or the economics or the environment or whatever those pressures outside of ourselves are. It's exhausting. So consider taking a nap. Consider resting. Consider going for a walk, just sitting in the sun a little bit. Just consider doing some things that may bring you a little bit more peace. That's the bottom line. All right. If you have any comments, I'd love to hear what you have to say about these podcasts. If they're valuable to you, you can email me at rosie@theparadigmshifts.com. You can go to Facebook. I've got my Facebook pages, and I've got Aging Like a Guru Facebook page. You're welcome to join me there. If you'd like to be interviewed for these podcasts, I'd love to do that. And if you'd like to consider doing some coaching with me, that would be awesome. All right, big hugs to you. And if you want to get connected with me, you can email me at rosie@theparadigmshifts.com. All right, big hugs. Bye for now.